Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video, I am going to tell you, also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storylines, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end. Start the video. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a 2021 American superhero film based on Marvel Comics featuring the character Shang-Chi. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, it is the 25th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. The film was directed by Destin Cretton from a screenplay he wrote with Dave Callaham and Andrew Lanham, and stars Simu Liu as Shang-Chi alongside Awkwafina, Meng'er Zhang, Fala Chen, Florian Munteanu, Benedict Wong, Yuen Wah, Michelle Yeoh, Ben Kingsley, and Tony Leung. In the film, Shang-Chi is forced to confront his past when his father Wenwu Leung, the leader of the Ten Rings terrorist organization, draws Shang-Chi and his sister Xiaoling, Zhang, into a search for a mythical village. A film based on Shang-Chi entered development 2001, but work did not begin in earnest until December 2018 when Callaham was hired. Cretton joined in March 2019, and the film's title and primary cast were announced that July. This revealed the film's connection to the Ten Rings organization, which previously appeared throughout the MCU, and its leader Wenwu, who was adapted from the problematic comic book characters Fu Manchu and the Mandarin. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the first Marvel Studios film with an Asian director and a predominantly Asian cast. Filming began in Sydney in February 2020 but was put on hold in March due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Production resumed in August and ended in October, with additional filming in San Francisco. Brad Allen and other members of the Jackie Chan stunt team coordinated the fight sequences. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings premiered in Hollywood, Los Angeles on August 16, 2021, and was released in the United States on September 3 as part of Phase 4 of the MCU. It grossed over $432 million worldwide, making it the 9th highest-grossing film of 2021. It set several box office records and received positive reviews from critics, many of whom praised the exploration and representation of Asian culture, which differentiated the film from the rest of the MCU, as well as the action sequences and Leung's performance. The film received various accolades, including a nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 94th Academy Awards. A sequel is in development. Plot. 1,000 years ago, Xu Wenwu discovers the mystical Ten Rings which grant godly powers including immortality. He establishes the Ten Rings organization, conquering kingdoms and toppling governments throughout history. In 1996, Wenwu searches for Talo, a village said to harbor mythical beasts. He travels through a magical forest to the village entrance, but is stopped by a guardian, Ying Li. The two soon fall in love, but the Talo villagers reject Wenwu, so Li chooses to leave with him. They marry and have 2 children, Shang-Chi and Xiaoling. Wenwu abandons his organization and locks away the Ten Rings. When Shang-Chi is 7 years old, Li is murdered by Wenwu's enemies, the Iron Gang. Wenwu dons the rings once again, massacres the Iron Gang, and resumes leadership of his organization. He makes Shang-Chi undergo brutal training in martial arts, but does not allow Xiaoling to train, prompting her to secretly teach herself. When Shang-Chi is 14, Wenwu sends him to assassinate the Iron Gang's leader. After completing his mission, a traumatized Shang-Chi runs away to San Francisco and adopts the name Sean. In the present day, Shang-Chi works as a parking valet with his best friend Katie. They are attacked on a bus by the Ten Rings organization, who steal a pendant that Li gave to Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi travels to Macau to find Xiaoling, fearing that the Ten Rings will go after her matching pendant. He reveals his past to Katie, who insists on helping him. They find Xialing at a secret fight club, which she founded after escaping from Wenwu at 16. The Ten Rings attack the fight club, and Wenwu arrives to capture Shang-Chi, Katie, Xialing, and her pendant. At the Ten Rings compound, Wenwu uses the pendants to reveal a mystical map leading to Ta Lo. Wenwu explains that he has heard Li calling and believes she has been held captive in Ta Lo behind a sealed gate. He plans to destroy the village unless they release her. When his children and Katie object, he imprisons them. They meet former actor Trevor Slattery, whom the Ten Rings imprisoned for impersonating Wenwu, and his Hundun companion Morris. They escape, and Morris guides them to Ta Lo, which exists in a separate dimension with various Chinese mythological creatures. The group meet Li's sister Ying Nan, who explains the history of Ta Lo. Thousands of years ago, the village's universe was attacked by the soul-consuming Dweller in Darkness and its soul-eaters, but was saved by a Chinese dragon called the Great Protector, who helped seal the Dark Gate to the Dweller's world. According to Nan, the Dweller in Darkness has been impersonating Li, so Wenwu will use the Ten Rings to open the gate. Shang-Chi, Xialing, Katie, Slattery, and Morris join the villagers in training and preparing for Wenwu's arrival, using outfits and weapons crafted from dragon scales that are effective against the Soul Eaters. Wenwu and the Ten Rings arrive and attack. Wenwu overpowers Shang-Chi, pushes him into the nearby lake, and attacks the gate with the rings. This allows some of the Dweller's Soul Eaters to escape, with the Ten Rings allying with the villagers to effectively fight them. The Great Protector revives Shang-Chi and bears him from the lake to battle the Soul Eaters. Wenwu and Shang-Chi fight once more, and Shang-Chi gains the upper hand but chooses to spare Wenwu. The Dweller in Darkness escapes from the weakened gate and attacks Shang-Chi. Wenwu saves Shang-Chi but is killed by the Dweller in Darkness. He bequeaths the rings to Shang-Chi before he dies. Shang-Chi, the Great Protector, Xialing, and Katie slay the Dweller in Darkness. Afterward, Shang-Chi and Katie return to San Francisco, where the sorcerer Wong summons them to Camartage. In a mid-credits scene, Wong introduces Shang-Chi and Katie to Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers, and the group discusses the origins of the rings. They discover that the rings are acting as a beacon to something. In a post-credits scene, Xialing becomes the new leader of the Ten Rings, despite telling Shang-Chi that she would disband the organization, and begins training women alongside men. Cast Simu Liu as Shu Shang-Chi, a skilled martial artist who was trained at a young age to be an assassin by his father Wenwu. Shang-Chi left the Ten Rings organization for a normal life in San Francisco and changed his name to Sean. Director Destin Cretton characterized Shang-Chi as a fish out of water in the U.S. who attempts to hide that with his charisma and does not know who he really is. Cretton also compared Shang-Chi to Matt Damon's character Will Hunting from Good Will Hunting, 1997, with both characters combining masculinity and vulnerability and having secrets and superpowers that they do not understand. Cretton said the film was a journey for Shang-Chi to discover his place in the world, and Liu added that Shang-Chi's identity struggles are the core of the character rather than his martial arts skills. Liu performed many of his own stunts since the character does not wear a mask and put on 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms of muscle for the role while working on his flexibility. Liu was knowledgeable in Taekwondo, gymnastics, and Wing Chun. Additionally, he trained in other various martial arts, including Tai Chi, Wushu, Muay Thai, Silat, Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and street fighting for the film. Jaden Zhang and Arnold Sun portray Shang-Chi as a child and teenager, respectively. Katie, a hotel valet and Shang-Chi's best friend in San Francisco, who is unaware of his past. Awkwafina described Katie as relatable, with a real heart and dedication to Shang-Chi, who is thrust into a world where she doesn't really know what to do and is discovering things about herself. Katie has difficulty committing to a direction in her life, something Awkwafina felt was a relatable struggle for a lot of Asian Americans due to their own expectations as well as those of their parents and society. Meng'er Zhang as Xialing, Shang-Chi's estranged younger sister and Wenwu's daughter, who was excluded from the Ten Rings organization by her father due to his traditional gender bias. Xialing is an amalgamation of several comic book characters, particularly inspired by Zhang Baoyu. This was Zhang's first film role, and she said the character was vulnerable behind her tough exterior. She originally had a red streak in her hair, but Zhang asked for this to be removed during filming after discovering the style's association with the rebellious Asian girl stereotype. The streak was removed from existing footage in post-production with visual effects. The role, Zhang trained in MMA, Tai Chi, and rope dart. Elodie Fong and Harmony. He portrays Xialing as a child and teenager, respectively. Fa Chen as Ying Li, Wenwu's wife and the mother of Shang-Chi and Xialing, who was a guardian of Ta Lo. Chen studied Tai Chi for the role. Florian Munteanu as Razor Fist, a member of the Ten Rings who has a machete blade for his right hand. Benedict Wong as Wong, a master of the mystic arts, participating in a cage-fighting tournament with Emil Blonsky. Yuanhua as Guangbo, one of the leaders of Ta Lo. Michelle Yeoh as Ying Nan, a guardian of Ta Lo who is Shang-Chi and Xialing's aunt. Ben Kingsley as Trevor Slattery, an actor who previously took on the guise of the Mandarin and was abducted by the Ten Rings, becoming a court jester, or Shakespearean fool, for Wenwu. He has a close relationship with the mythical Hundun Morris and journeys to Ta Lo with Shang-Chi. Cretton felt it was essential to hear Slattery admit how ridiculous that whole Mandarin impersonation situation was, as seen in Iron Man 3, 2013, and the Marvel one-shot short film All Hail the King, 2014, feeling that having Slattery apologize for impersonating Wenwu was the perfect way to apologize for the racial stereotypes surrounding the Mandarin. Kingsley enjoyed revisiting and developing the character, with Cretton saying Kingsley was able to portray a Trevor who has actually benefited from being in prison and has come out a clean and sober version of himself. Tony Leung as Shu, Shang-Chi and Xialing's father and the leader of the Ten Rings. Wenwu is an original character created for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, CU, who replaces Shang-Chi's original comic book father, Fu Manchu, a problematic character associated with racist stereotypes to whom Marvel Studios does not hold the film rights. In the film, Wenwu has taken on many different names, including the Mandarin, which is a name that producer Jonathan Schwartz noted comes with audience expectations due to its comic book history. He said Wenwu was a more complex and layered character than the comic book version, with Cretton adding that there were problematic aspects of the Mandarin's comic book portrayal that he wanted to change. He felt Leung avoided Asian stereotypes and a one-dimensional portrayal by bringing humanity and love to the role. Describing Wenwu as a fully realized human with relatable reasons for his bad decisions. Leung did not want to approach the character as a villain, instead hoping to explore the reasons behind why he is a man with history who craves to be loved, describing him as a sociopath, a narcissist, and a bigot. This was Leung's first Hollywood film after a long career primarily in Hong Kong action cinema. Also appearing in the film are Ronnie Chieng as John John, Xialing's right-hand man and announcer at her underground fighting club, Jodie Long as Mrs. Chen, Katie's mother, Dallas Liu as Ruiwa, Katie's brother, Paul He as Chancellor Huai, Tsai Chin as Katie's grandmother, Andy Lei as Death Dealer, one of Wenwu's assassins who trained Shang-Chi in his youth, Stephanie Hsu and Kunal Dudhecker as Sue and John, married friends of Shang-Chi and Katie, Zach Cherry as Clev, a bus rider who live streams one of Shang-Chi's fights after portraying a street vendor in 2017's Spider-Man Homecoming, and Dee Baker as the voice of Morris, a Hundun who befriends Slattery. Jade Shu reprises her role as a Black Widow named Helen from Black Widow, 2021, while Tim Roth provides uncredited vocals for his The Incredible Hulk, 2008 character Abomination. Mark Ruffalo and Brie Larson appear, uncredited, in the mid-credits scene, reprising their respective MCU roles of Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. Production development. According to Margaret Loesch, former president and CEO of Marvel Productions, Stan Lee discussed a potential film or television series based on the Marvel Comics character Shang-Chi with actor Brandon Lee and his mother Linda Lee during the 1980s. With the intention of having Brandon Lee star as the character Brandon's father, martial arts legend Bruce Lee was the visual inspiration for artist Paul Gulacy when drawing Shang-Chi during his tenure on the Master of Kung Fu comic book in the 1970s. In 2001, Stephen Norrington signed on to direct a Shang-Chi film entitled The Hands of Shang-Chi. By 2003, It was in development at DreamWorks Pictures, with Yuen Wu-ping replacing Norrington as director and Bruce C. McKenna writing the screenplay. 48. Ang Lee joined the project as a producer in 2004, but it did not materialize and the rights to the character reverted to Marvel. In September 2005, Marvel chairman and CEO Avi Arad announced Shang-Chi as one of 10 properties being developed as films by the newly formed Marvel Studios, after the company received financing to produce the slate with Paramount Pictures as distributor. Marvel thought the character could make a great film, despite being relatively unknown, because he has a very Disney story in the comic books. The Ten Rings organization was introduced in Marvel Studios' first Marvel Cinematic Universe (MCU) film, Iron Man, 2008, without its leader, the Mandarin. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige felt they could not do the character justice in the Iron Man films because they focused on Tony's Iron Man and planned to introduce him in a later film instead. According to Chris Fenton, former president of the Chinese-based film production company DMG Entertainment, that was in talks with Marvel Studios to co-produce their films, Marvel offered to create a teaser featuring either Shang-Chi or the Mandarin for the Chinese market that would be featured at the end of The Avengers 2012. DMG balked at the offer since the Mandarin's negative stereotypical portrayal in the comics could potentially prevent the film from being released in China and risk DMG being shut down. The Mandarin would eventually appear in the DMG co-produced film Iron Man 3, 2013, portrayed by Ben Kingsley, but he is revealed to be an actor named Trevor Slattery, who was hired to pose as the Mandarin. Feige felt this did not necessarily mean a more faithful version of the character did not exist in the MCU, and this was confirmed in the Marvel one-shot short film All Hail the King 2014, in which Kingsley reprised his role as Slattery. By December 2018, Marvel had fast-tracked development of a Shang-Chi film with the intent of making it their first film with an Asian lead. Marvel hired Chinese-American writer Dave Callaham to write the screenplay and began looking at Asian and Asian-American filmmakers to potentially direct the film. The studio's goal was to have Asian and Asian-American filmmakers explore themes related to their culture, as they had done for African and African-American culture with Black Panther earlier in 2018. Development of the film also came following the success of the film Crazy Rich Asians, that was likewise released earlier in 2018 and led to several other Asian-led properties being developed by Hollywood studios. Callaham's script was expected to modernize elements of the comic book story, which was first written in the 1970s, to avoid what modern audiences would consider to be negative stereotypes. When Callaham began work on the script, he became emotional realizing it was the first project where he was asked to write from my own experience, from my own perspective. Jessica Gao, who would later become the head writer of the Marvel Studios television series She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, 2022, also presented a pitch for the film. Richard Newby of The Hollywood Reporter said the film could break out in a way similar to Black Panther by bringing a new perspective to the character. Newby felt Shang-Chi could have worked well as a television series and said it speaks volumes that Marvel would decide to make a feature film about the character instead. Newby concluded that the film was an opportunity to avoid stereotypes about Asian martial artists and be more than Marvel's Bruce Lee. Marvel Studios hired Japanese-American filmmaker Destin Cretton to direct the film in March 2019. Deborah Chow, who previously directed episodes of Marvel Television's Iron Fist, 2017-2018, and Jessica Jones, 2015-2019 series, Justin Tipping and Alan Yang were also considered. Cretton had previously not been interested in directing a superhero film, but was drawn to the project to help create a world and character that Asian children could look up to and see themselves in. His pitch included visual inspiration from Chinese, South Korean, Japanese, and other Asian cinema, including anime, to highlight a tone that showed the drama and the pain of life, but also showed the humor of life. In April, Marvel Studios and Australian Arts Minister Mitch Fifield announced that an upcoming Marvel film, believed to be Shang-Chi, would be filmed at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney and on location throughout the state of New South Wales. The production received $24 million, $18 million in one-off funding from the Australian government, as well as backing from the $10 million, $8 million made in NCB State Fund. The production was expected to generate $150 million, $113 million for the Australian economy, as well as 4,700 new jobs, while taking advantage of around 1,200 local businesses. Don Harwin, the New South Wales Arts Minister, confirmed in July that this film was Shang-Chi and it would be produced back-to-back with Marvel Studios' Thor: Love and Thunder 2022. Production on Shang-Chi was set to begin in early 2020 and be completed later that year. Pre-production casting. Marvel Studios began testing actors in their 20s for the role of Shang-Chi in mid-July 2019, including Louis Tan and Simu Liu. Tan previously portrayed Zhou Cheng in Iron Fist. The studio was adamant that actors be of Chinese descent to audition for the character, 64. Liu was considered earlier in the audition process and was brought back in for a second audition when the creatives were finding it difficult to cast the role. He tested again on July 14th and was officially cast on July 16th. Awkwafina, who was the first actor cast for the film, had chemistry tests with the potential actors and said it was apparent that was Shang-Chi from the jump. Liu and Awkwafina's castings were announced by Cretton and producer Feige at Marvel Studios' San Diego Comic-Con panel on July 20th, where the film's full title was announced to be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Feige noted the connection between this title and the Ten Rings organization that had appeared throughout the MCU. He said the group's leader, the Mandarin, would be introduced in this film, and Tony Leung had been cast in the role. Cretton had wanted to cast Leung, but was doubtful he would accept the part. Despite this hesitation, producer Jonathan Schwartz decided to contact Leung, and he accepted the role after a meeting with Cretton. In December, Feige said the film would feature a predominantly Asian cast. A month later, Michelle Yeoh entered talks for a role in the film. This was for a different character than Alita Ogord, who Yeoh had briefly portrayed in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 2, 2017. Jessica Henwick, who previously portrayed Colleen Wing in Marvel Television's Netflix series, was asked to audition for the role of Xialing in the film, but was concurrently offered the role of Bugs in The Matrix Resurrections, 2021. After being given an ultimatum to select one of the roles by the respective studios, Henwick chose the Resurrections part. This was partially because she hoped to reprise the role of Wing in a future MCU production. Newcomer Meng'er Zhang was eventually cast in the role. Kingsley reprises his role as Slattery in the film. The character's inclusion was planned early on to help fully explore the context of who the Mandarin is in the MCU. Schwartz called Slattery a secret weapon, whose introduction partway through the film moves it in a different direction and provides comic relief. Writing. In addition to Callaham, Cretton and Andrew Lanham also contributed to the screenplay for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings from a story by Callaham and Cretton. The film was described as a sweeping superhero epic that combines emotional family drama with gravity-defying martial arts action. Schwartz said much of Shang-Chi's arc within Marvel Comics is a family drama, and Cretton wanted to focus on that element for the film, exploring Shang-Chi's broken and abusive family background. Liu noted that the comic book backstory for Shang-Chi is not widely known, like those for comic book characters such as Batman or Spider-Man, and that gave the film's writers freedom to take more creative liberties with the story. Cretton and Callaham were cognizant of some of the racial stereotypes surrounding the character in the comics, with Liu saying everyone involved was very sensitive to not have it go into stereotypical territory. Cretton believed the resulting script was a really beautiful update to the character from what began in the comics. Cretton felt the film told an authentic story about Asian identity. Callaham said there is no single Asian American voice, and he and Cretton contemplated how the film could speak to the wider Asian diaspora and would be generally entertaining, but also personal to all these people. Cast members Liu, Leung, and Zhang contributed their own experiences coming from Canada, Hong Kong, and mainland China, respectively, to add to the authenticity of the film. Some aspects that were discussed regarding each scene were whether characters should be speaking in Chinese Mandarin or English, and the type of food served in the different households to ensure it felt authentic to whose house it was. The film's opening begins with narration entirely in Mandarin, which Nancy Wang Yuan, writing for IO9, said was a striking decision for an MCU film to begin in a language other than English and continue to do so for an extended period. Regarding the use of Mandarin in the film, Cretton said the choice of which language to use when was always rooted in just the logic of the characters and who would naturally be speaking what language. Zhang, whose first language is Mandarin, served as a dialect coach for the other actors. Shang-Chi further deals with some of the negative characterization around Asian Americans and languages by portraying its characters as having varied knowledge of Asian languages, as demonstrated by an exchange with Katie and the character John when John says he speaks ABC, American-born Chinese. Another such moment is when Shang-Chi teaches Katie how to pronounce his name, which serves as a meta moment to also aid the audience on learning the proper pronunciation of Shang-Chi. Cretton felt it was important to have many strong women around Shang-Chi that were kicking his butt into gear, in contrast to the relationship between Shang-Chi and his father Wenwu, the film's version of the Mandarin. These supporting characters also have their own narrative arcs. Cretton's three sisters and his wife helped inspire the characters Katie, Xialing, Ying Nan, and Ying Li. Speaking to the relationship between Shang-Chi and Katie, Cretton enjoyed being able to show a strong, deeply caring friendship that is rarely seen in superhero films, adding that it would have felt forced to have the two characters end up in a romantic relationship together. Yo requested a scene be added between her character Yingnan and Zhang Xialing that would empower Xialing to step out of the shadows for the first time. This scene became an important part of Xialing's journey in the film and was one of the many scenes that also addressed the sexism presented in the story. Cretton felt seeing Xialing become the new head of the Ten Rings organization in the film's post-credit scene was reflective of her beginning to take control of her life. Various versions of the scene existed throughout the production before it was moved to be after the credits, since they thought it was a juicy idea for where the story might go in the future. Design. Sue Chan served as production designer for the film. The first location that she and the crew scouted was San Francisco, where Chan previously lived. She suggested Clement Street, the old Chinatown of San Francisco, as the character's home because it does not have the expected Chinatown cliches. The film's San Francisco apartment set was one of Chan's favorites due to its accuracy to real Asian American houses. Another favorite was a restaurant set where Wenwu kills his enemies, for which Chan took inspiration from Hong Kong gangster films. Cretton wanted Xialing's fight club to be fun and show her character rather than be scary and dangerous. Chan noted that Xialing's office combines imagery of skulls with flowers and bold colors, and the sets incorporate the character's feminist views. The fighting arena is an octagon because the number 8 is significant in Asian cultures. For Ta Lo, Chan researched ancient Chinese culture and designs and took elements from many eras, since the village is not from a specific time in Chinese history. These elements include symbolism, styles, and colors from the Tang and Song dynasties. Key symbols for the village were the 5 Chinese elements of wood, water, fire, metal, and earth, with metal being replaced with dragon scales for the film. These elements were used as the basis of the village set, along with traditional construction elements such as bamboo. Both real and artificial bamboo was used. The village itself was built in an open area by a reservoir outside of Sydney, and all of the buildings in the village were planned, built, and dressed as they would be used by the inhabitants. These include a pottery shed, a cooking shed, and a schoolroom, all built around the central temple, which is open on all sides and contains the history of Ta Lo. Ta Lo's universe is inhabited by various Chinese mythological creatures, including dragons, Feng Huang, Shishi, Hundun, Juehu, and Qilin. Andy Park led Marvel Studios' visual development team for the film and specifically designed Shang-Chi's hero costume. The costume combines elements of his own style with those from both his parents. The jacket is made from the Talo dragon scales and is a gift from his mother. He receives the 10 rings from his father at the end of the film, and he wears his own American shoes. Costume designer Kim Barrett also researched ancient Chinese designs and then adapted these to suit the film's stunt needs. The 10 Rings logo that was originally designed for the MCU featured a circle of 10 interlocked rings with characters from the Mongolian language. The logo's appearance in Iron Man 3 drew ire from the Mongolian government, who felt the Mongolian scripts offensively tied the country's intangible cultural heritage to a terrorist group. The logo was updated for Shang-Chi to use inoffensive Chinese characters instead, including synonyms for strength or power written in ancient seal script. Oyungerel Tsedavdamba, Mongolia's former Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism, believed the change was more to appease the Chinese market than the Mongolian government. The actual 10 rings are portrayed as bangles worn on the wrist rather than as finger rings like they are in the comics. Schwartz said multiple approaches to the rings were discussed, and the comic-accurate design looked a little goofy in practice and was too similar to the Infinity Stones that appear throughout the MCU. The 10 Rings compound goes through 4 stages in the film that reflect Wenwu's character. It begins as a cold fortress that prominently features the 10 Rings logo. The compound then becomes a family home with bright colors, gardens, design elements from the Ta Lo village, and a mosaic of a phoenix replacing the 10 Rings logo. The color was then stripped from the sets to make it a desolate shell as Wenwu mourns the death of his wife. And finally, elements of Xiaoling's Fight Club are introduced in the post-credits scene as she takes over the compound and makes it her own. Filming. Principal photography began in February 2020, shooting at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney and on location throughout the state of New South Wales, under the working title Steamboat. William Pope served as cinematographer for the film, shooting on the Arri Alexa LF. Cretton chose Pope because he felt the cinematographer's style could be both naturalistic and heightened, and because of Pope's work on The Matrix, 1999, which Cretton believed had the right tone for an MCU film focused on Asian and Asian American characters. Pope already wanted to work with Cretton after being impressed by his film Short Term 12, 2013. Cretton was inspired for his direction by Jackie Chan's filmography, the Ip Man series, Tai Chi Master, 1993, and Kung Fu Hustle, 2004, among others in the martial arts and kung fu genres, as well as anime and video games. On March 12th, after studios had started halting production on films due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Cretton decided to have himself tested for coronavirus after working closely with people who had potentially been exposed to it. This was a precaution due to Cretton having a newborn baby, and he self-isolated while awaiting these results, 90. The test later came back negative. While Cretton was self-isolating, Marvel suspended first unit production for the film, but intended for other aspects, such as second unit, to continue as normal. On March 13th, the rest of the film's production was paused as Disney halted filming on most of its projects. Before the shutdown, Ronnie Chieng joined the cast in an undisclosed role. In early April, Disney shifted much of the MCU's Phase 4 slate of films due to the pandemic, moving Shang-Chi's release date to May 7, 2021. Work-building sets for the film resumed at the end of July 2020, and by August 2nd, all cast and crew members had arrived to begin shooting in the coming days. Any cast and crew returning to Australia had to be quarantined for 2 weeks upon arrival before returning to work, according to Australia's COVID-19 guidelines. Later in August, Yeoh was confirmed to be appearing in the film. The next month, the film's release date was pushed back to July 9, 2021, after Black Widow was shifted to the May 2021 date. In October, filming took place in San Francisco, also under the working title Steamboat. Due to the pandemic, crew in Australia could not travel to San Francisco for this filming. Shooting locations included the Russian Hill, No Valley, and Nob Hill neighborhoods, as well as Fisherman's Wharf and Ghirardelli Square. Filming wrapped on October 24, 2020. Choreography. Cretton wanted to use a range of different fighting styles in the film due to Shang-Chi being trained in different types of martial arts. These include the elegant, almost ethereal wushu style, from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, 2000, and the kinetic fights of Jackie Chan's films. Supervising stunt coordinator Brad Allen, along with other members of the Jackie Chan stunt team, became responsible for making the different styles feel consistent, as well as containing elements of Hong Kong action cinema, 60. Schwartz said there was a meaning for each fighting style in the film, and they helped to tell the story visually. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is dedicated to Allen, who died in August 2021. The bus fight sequence was part of Cretton's initial pitch for the film. He called it a what-if scenario that helped explain the kind of fight sequences he enjoyed, ones where the stakes just keep rising as the fight continues. Once it was decided to include the sequence in the film and planning for it began, Cretton credited Allen for bringing the Buster Keaton-like physical comedy to the fight, mixed with setups and payoffs and stakes rising to almost ridiculous levels. The stunt team added a specific reference to Jackie Chan, who is known for this style of fighting, in which Shang-Chi takes off his jacket, spins it around while fighting, and puts it back on. Fight coordinator Andy Cheng said the whole sequence took over a year to plan, going through as many as 20 different iterations, with most of the differences pertaining to the fighting within the bus. He said figuring out how the bus would be sliced in half and choreographing a fight around that was the most difficult part. The stunt team put together 10 to 15 different stunt viz edits planning out the sequence. 2 buses were shipped to Sydney for filming the sequence's interior shots. These buses were taken apart and reassembled on a 15 feet, 4.6 meters high gimbal and a 3.3 feet, 1 meters high gimbal, with the windows and seats removed most of the time for safety. The sequence was partially completed when the production shut down for COVID, requiring those involved to retune once production resumed. Filming for the interior shots took around 6 weeks. The exterior shots were filmed in San Francisco with a different crew due to the pandemic. The visual effects team planned out the shoot remotely so the unit could get the footage that was needed. 4 more buses were used for this portion of the sequence, including one that was filmed crashing down a hill into several cars. The entire sequence was shot in 48 FPS to help with tracking and making adjustments, and was then converted back to 24 FPS. The shots in slow motion were shot at 250 FPS using a phantom camera. The sequence ends at a real intersection in San Francisco that was partially filmed in Sydney and combined with footage from San Francisco by the visual effects team. Cretton said there were some fudges in how accurate the sequence was to San Francisco. You can't go downhill for 6 minutes straight, but was mostly based on a real route suggested by Chan. The bus is meant to be a Muni bus, but different branding was used due to that company not wanting to be associated with a crashing bus. Cretton initially told Long that he would not need to fight due to Wenwu's use of the 10 rings, but the actor did ultimately have several fight sequences and only had 2 weeks to prepare for them. He said this was not difficult due to his experience acting in action films. The character's first action scene, where he falls in love with Ying Li, took specific inspiration from the wuxia style of films such as Hero 2002, which Long starred in, and he said filming the scene reminded him of his early career. The fight in Macau on scaffolding outside Xiaoling's Fight Club was filmed against blue screen on several sets of scaffolding, including one that was built on a 45-degree gimbal to achieve a specific shot with Xiaoling. The Kamehameha attack from the anime series Dragon Ball Z was an inspiration for the final fight between Shang-Chi and Wenwu, which Cretton also included in his pitch. Post-production, Nat Sanders and Elisabeth Ronald's daughter served as co-editors on the film 107 alongside Harry Yoon. In December 2020, Marvel revealed roles for several cast members, including Awkwafina as Shang-Chi's friend Katie, Yo as Jiang Nan, and Chiang as John John. They also announced the casting of Zhang as Xiaoling, Fala Chen as Jiang Li, and Florian Munteanu as Razor Fist. Munteanu was cast after Marvel Studios was impressed with his role in Creed II, 2018. In March 2021, the film's release date was pushed back once again to September 3, 2021, when Black Widow was shifted to the July 2021 date and Dallas Liu was revealed to be appearing. The film's official trailer in June 2021 revealed that Benedict Wong would reprise his MCU role of Wong, and the character Emil Blonsky, Abomination, would be appearing alongside him. The Abomination first appeared in The Incredible Hulk, 2008, portrayed by Tim Roth, and Roth returned to provide uncredited vocals for the character in Shang-Chi. Feige enjoyed returning to the Abomination after over a decade since his last MCU appearance, especially with the fans recognizing and embracing the reference in the trailer. The characters were added to the film after Gao created a storyline for them in She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, so the audience could be reminded of Abomination and get excited for their upcoming appearances in the series. Wong was thrilled to be part of the film and its Asian cast, expressing excitement to be sat at a table of Asian excellence. The film's mid-credits scene, which features Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and Brie Larson as Carol Danvers, was conceived late in production by Cretton to tease the origins of the Ten Rings. Several origins were written for the rings, but Callaham said none of these made a difference to the film's story, so they decided to leave the origin ambiguous, which meant it could be addressed in a later MCU project. Cretton hoped they could feature Wong in the scene and have him go to karaoke with Shang-Chi and Katie to sing Hotel California, but was unsure which additional Avengers characters would appear until late in post-production. Banner and Danvers were chosen since they each represent the science and space aspects of the MCU, respectively, and because their appearances align with other events in the MCU happening around the time of the scene. Cretton also jokingly acknowledged that Larson's appearance continued her streak of appearing in his films after the pair worked together on Short Term 12, The Glass Castle 2017, and Just Mercy 2019. Ruffalo and Larson filmed their roles in early 2021 during the film's additional photography. Feige said the scene indicated how important Shang-Chi is to the MCU, likening it to Nick Fury's appearance in the post-credits scene of Iron Man. Visual effects Weta FX contributed more than 305 visual effects shots to the film, including creating the 10 rings. Weta visual effects supervisor Sean Walker said creating realistic-looking rings digitally was not complicated, but getting the correct movements for each character was. Shang-Chi uses the rings defensively, while Wenwu uses them in an aggressive manner. Feige initially wanted the energy of each ring to have its own color as a reference to the comic book rings, which each have a different ability, but they found this to be too distracting. Instead, the energy of the rings is based on who is using them, with warmer orange energy for Shang-Chi and a cooler blue color for Wenwu. Weta also created the Great Protector and the Dweller in Darkness for the final action sequence. The Great Protector's scales were initially based on quartz, porcelain, and shells, before the team found images of albino lizards, alligators, and snakes that they thought were the perfect reference for the creature. The dragon's hair was then simulated on top. In contrast, the Dweller in Darkness was based on rhino and elephant hides and armored lizards. The souls that the Dweller in Darkness and its soul eaters consume were intended to be colorful visualizations of chakras, but this was ultimately toned down to a more subtle effect. Music. Joel P. West, who scored Cretton's 4 previous films, returned to compose the score for Shang-Chi. He acknowledged that this was the biggest film he had ever worked on. West began working on the film when Cretton was hired and developed his ideas throughout the filmmaking process. He wrote ominous and dominating music for Wenwu and more ethereal music for Ying Li, and then combined these to create Shang-Chi's music, since the story is about him accepting both sides of his family. West spent months researching Chinese music so he could incorporate traditional Chinese elements into the score, primarily for Ying Li and Ta Lo. Recording took place with a 70-piece London orchestra at Abbey Road Studios in London by June 2021, with the UK Chinese ensemble also providing traditional Chinese instruments and performances for the score. An album featuring the film's score was released digitally by Marvel Music and Hollywood Records on September 1, 2021. Marvel Music, Hollywood Records, and Interscope Records also released 4 separate singles inspired by the film ahead of its release. Lazy Susan by 21 Savage and Rich Brian, Every Summertime by Nicki, Run It by DJ Snake, Rick Ross, and Rich Brian, and In the Dark by Sway Lee and Jhené Aiko. A soundtrack album was released on September 3rd, containing these in addition to songs by J.J. Lin, Saweetie, Anderson .Paak, and other members of the next generation of Asian artists. This was produced by Sean Miyashiro and 88 Rising, who worked with Cretton to tell a story in the album about the Asian American experience with particular inspiration from San Francisco because that city is featured in the film. Marketing. On April 19, 2021, which was Liu's birthday, he shared the first teaser poster for the film. This was shortly followed by Marvel releasing the first teaser trailer. Adam B. Vary of Variety felt it was gratifying to finally see Liu in action as Shang-Chi, and highlighted how the teaser provided further insight into details, such as how the film would depict the Mandarin wearing the 10 rings, Cole Delbeek. At HuffPost said the eye-popping action was unlike anything seen in past MCU films. Writing for IO9, Rob Bricken felt the teaser did not disappoint with its action, but the family drama was what made the film look compelling to him. Collider's Adam Chitwood called the teaser pretty fantastic, comparing its story and tone to Black Panther and saying Shang-Chi looked to be an exciting, fresh, and new Marvel Cinematic Universe experience based on the teaser. Reactions to the poster and trailer in Chinese-speaking regions in East Asia were more critical, with commentators believing both presented a stereotypical view of Chinese people and culture. The film's first full trailer was released on June 24, 2021, during ESPN's NBA Countdown. Sean Keane at CNET enjoyed seeing more of Long in the trailer and called the fight sequences super impressive. He was surprised by the inclusion of Abomination at the end of the trailer and noted that the character looked more like his design from the comics than when he appeared in The Incredible Hulk. Digital Spy's Gabriella Geisinger felt the Abomination's role in the film would just be a cameo appearance to set up the character's story in She-Hulk Attorney at Law, but also felt it could have wide-reaching implications for the MCU. Germaine Lucier of IO9 Susanna Polo of Polygon, and Jennifer Willett of Ars Technica all felt the trailer was a better showcase for Shang-Chi than the teaser was, with Willett highlighting the different narration for the trailer that expanded on Shang-Chi's family background. Lussier also noted a lot of new visual effects in the trailer that were not in the teaser, and felt Shang-Chi would soon become a big star despite not being a well-known character. On August 15, 2021, Ron Han created a GoFundMe drive to raise money for Asian American Pacific Islander API children at the Boys and Girls Club in San Gabriel Valley to see Shang-Chi, as well as a larger Shang-Chi challenge for other people to create similar drives for their communities. The challenge was inspired by a similar one created for Black Panther. By the end of the month, API nonprofit organization Gold House partnered with GoFundMe to create the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings Gold Open Community Fund to raise money for private screenings of the film for the API community and nonprofit groups. An episode of the series Marvel Studios' Legends was released on September 1st, exploring the Ten Rings organization using footage from its previous MCU appearances. Beginning September 3rd, Shang-Chi and Death Dealer began appearing in Disneyland's Avengers Campus. Promotional partners for the film included Sanzo Beverages, which released a limited edition version of lychee flavor, Microsoft, BMW, which acted as the film's global car sponsor and had the BMW iX3 and BMW M8 appear in the film, Old Spice, and international sponsors including Visa, Virgin Plus, Grupo Tim, Micron Group, and BGF. Release: theatrical. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings had its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater and TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, on August 16, 2021, and was screened at CinemaCon on August 25th. The film was released in international markets beginning on September 1st and had been released in 66% of its markets by the end of its first weekend. The film was released in the United States on September 3rd in over 4,200 theaters, of which 400 were IMAX, over 850 were premium large format, 1,500 were 3D, and an additional 275 were the D-Box, 4DX, and ScreenX formats. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is part of Phase 4 of the MCU. Shang-Chi was previously scheduled to be released on February 12, 2021, the first day of the Chinese New Year, before it was shifted to May 7, 93, and then to July 9th, delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The film shifted once again in March 2021 to the September 2021 date after Black Widow was moved to the July 9th release date. In Australia, Shang-Chi was released on September 2nd with a planned release in New South Wales, Victoria, and Australian Capital Territory on September 16th because of COVID-19 related state lockdowns. It was ultimately released in New South Wales on October 11th when theaters in the state reopened. The film had a 45-day exclusive theatrical release rather than being released simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus with premiere access like Black Widow was. In August 2021, with the increase of COVID-19 Delta variant cases, Disney CEO Bob Chapek explained that the film would stay theatrical only for its 45-day window due to logistical reasons, and said this window was an interesting experiment for the company to learn more on how consumers wish to view their films. Liu took issue with Chapek calling the film an experiment, but Feige later stated that Liu's response appeared to be based on a misunderstanding of Chapek's intention. In May 2021, a Chinese state media report excluded Shang-Chi, as well as Marvel's Eternals, from its list of upcoming MCU films being released. Variety noted that this added to rumors that the films would not be released in China. In September 2021, Deadline Hollywood reported that a theatrical release in China was unlikely due to comments Liu made in an interview with the CBC in 2017, which referenced his parents' negative experiences living in China. Disney still listed the film's release in China as to be determined in October, but it ultimately did not receive a theatrical release in the country. Home media: the film was released on digital download on November 12, 2021, as well as on Disney Plus as part of the service's Disney Plus Day celebration. Disney Plus also received the IMAX enhanced version of the film. It was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on November 30th. The home media of the film includes audio commentary, deleted scenes, a gag reel, and various behind-the-scenes featurettes. Following the release of Shang-Chi on Disney+, viewer tracking application Samba TV reported that over 1.7 million U.S. households watched the film within its first weekend of availability. Samba TV also reported viewership numbers for the United Kingdom, 250,000, Germany, 85,000, and Australia, 17,000, while TV Time reported that it was the most streamed film in the United States during that same time frame. Nielsen stated that it was the second most streamed film behind Netflix's Red Notice, with a viewership of 1.072 billion minutes in its first week. Asian Americans made up 10% of the audience, the highest percentage for any title on the chart. The film remained in the top 5 on Nielsen and TV Time's charts in the following weeks, and TV Time stated that it was the 6th most streamed film globally in 2021. The film was number 1 on the NPD VideoScan First Alert chart, which tracks combined sales of DVDs and Blu-rays, and the dedicated Blu-ray sales chart for 2 weeks. It was the 3rd most selling title on disc for December 2021, according to the NPD Group. Reception. Box office. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings grossed $224.5 million in the United States and Canada and $207.7 million other territories for a worldwide total of $432.2 million. It became the highest-grossing film ever released on Labor Day weekend and earned $13.2 million worldwide from IMAX, another Labor Day weekend record. Shang-Chi earned $29.6 million on its opening day, which included $8.8 million from its Thursday night previews, the third best opening day since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020. The Thursday night previews gross was the second highest of the pandemic, behind Black Widow, $13.2 million. It grossed $75.5 million over its 3-day opening weekend, the second largest of the pandemic behind Black Widow, $80.3 million. IMAX contributed $8 million, which was a record for a Labor Day weekend release. The film earned $94.67 million over the 4-day Labor Day weekend, surpassing Halloween's 2007 $30.6 million to become the largest Labor Day weekend opening ever. The film surpassed $100 million in 5 days, the fastest film to reach that milestone since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, 2019, did it in its opening weekend. Shang-Chi remained the number 1 film in its second weekend, earning $35.8 million, which was the largest second weekend gross of the pandemic, and in its third weekend, when it earned $21.7 million, the second largest third weekend gross for a September release behind It, 2017. It was the third MCU film following Guardians of the Galaxy, 2014, and Black Panther to remain the top film for 4 consecutive weeks, and was the first film of the pandemic era to surpass $200 million in the United States and Canada when it did so on September 30th. It was the third highest grossing film in its 5th weekend, the 4th highest in its 6th weekend, and remained in the top 10 at the box office for 2 additional weekends. The film ended its run at the United States and Canada box office as the second highest grossing film of 2021, behind Spider-Man: No Way Home. The film earned $56.2 million from 41 markets in its opening weekend, opening number 1 in many. The United Kingdom release had the largest opening day of the pandemic and the largest 3-day opening weekend of the pandemic, with $7.7 million. In Hong Kong, the film produced the largest September opening weekend, as well as the second-best opening during the pandemic. Nancy Tartaglione of Deadline Hollywood noted South Korea's $6.5 million opening was an underperformance for the market and an MCU film, though it was the first Hollywood film to open at number 1 there in several weeks. In its second weekend, the film earned $35.2 million from 42 markets, remaining number 1 in several. In its third weekend, the film earned an additional $20.3 million from 43 markets and was still the top film in territories such as Australia, Brazil, Mexico, and the UK. The film remained at number 1 in all of the territories in its 4th weekend when it opened in Indonesia. It was number 1 there as well with $1.2 million. Shang-Chi was the top film in Australia for 9 weekends, with its highest grossing day coming on October 31, 2021. 2. As of October 2021, the film's largest markets are the United Kingdom, $27.1 million, South Korea, $14.9 million, and France, $11.5 million. Critical response. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported an approval rating of 92%, with an average score of 7.5/10 based on 344 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings isn't entirely free of Marvel's familiar formula, but this exciting origin story expands the MCU in more ways than one. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 71 out of 100 based on 52 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Critics commonly praised the film's representation of Asian culture, which differentiated it from other MCU films, as well as the performances and action sequences. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+ to F scale, while PostTrack reported 91% of audience members gave it a positive score, and 78% said they would definitely recommend it. Peter DeBrugge at Variety said the decision to give the second-tier Shang-Chi the same over-the-top treatment as major Marvel heroes had broadened Marvel Studios' cultural representation and would empower audiences of Asian descent in a similar way to what Black Panther did for audiences of African descent. Angie Han of The Hollywood Reporter felt the film did not combine its martial arts, fantasy elements, and exploration of Chinese and Asian American culture as smoothly as should, but did find it to be a fresh and fun superhero film. Giving the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, RogerEbert.com's Nick Allen said the film fit within Marvel's formula, but had a soulfulness that other MCU films, as well as superhero and action films in general, did not have. He concluded that Shang-Chi was not an experiment for Marvel and Disney, but rather a promising template for how they can get it right again. Writing for Empire, Laura Sirical said the film was a winning blend of Chinese culture and the Marvel formula that avoided Asian stereotypes and called out some of Marvel's past racial errors. Francesca Rivera at IGN felt the film had successfully balanced the real-life complicated conflict between first-gen Asian American children and the wishes of their immigrant parents with the needs of an MCU film. Alexis Ned said Liu was flawless as Shang-Chi and compared his casting to that of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark Iron Man and Chris Evans as Steve Rogers Captain America in the MCU. Jake Cole of Slant Magazine was more critical, giving the film 1.5 out of 4 stars and criticizing Liu's performance as being curiously effectless. Cole also criticized the film's flashbacks, which he felt slowed the overall story down, but praised Leung as effortlessly convey the calm malice with which Wenwu asserts his absolute power, as well as the anguish that the man feels over the loss of his wife. Allen said Leung was the film's most brilliant casting, and Han praised his performance for bringing sincerity to Wenwu, which made him a supervillain with a soul. Katie Rife at the AV Club said Leung exudes the type of movie star charisma critics sometimes complain is on the decline. Rife felt Leung was not being challenged by the material in the film, but was still able to bring emotional depth to Wenwu. Siricool praised the performances of Liu, Awkwafina, and Leung, but felt some of the character arcs were undermined by the film's convoluted story and rushed ending. Entertainment Weekly's Leah Greenblatt highlighted Zhang, who she felt deserved her own spin-off, and Awkwafina. Rivera praised the film's action sequences as the best of the MCU so far, focusing on the choreography and cinematography, and particularly highlighting the wuxia-style fight between Wenwu and Li at the start of the film, but criticized the digital backgrounds in Ta Lo. Wenlei Ma at news.com.au also said the film's action had some of the best choreography of the MCU. Greenblatt praised the bus fight, Fight Club, and skyscraper fight sequences as astonishing set pieces, while Matt Goldberg at Collider also praised the action set pieces for combining classic kung fu movie influences with MCU visual effects. Peter Hartlaub of the San Francisco Chronicle said the bus fight was one of the best car chases in San Francisco movie history. Allen enjoyed the various fight sequences, saying Cretton changed the height, light, reflections, and staging for each. He described the film's final act as such an over-the-top, giddy roller coaster ride that you can't help but root for it. In contrast, Cole took issue with the amount of visual effects in the action sequences and said the final act devolves into loud and chaotic visual nonsense. At Film, Hoai Tran Bui also criticized the visual effects-heavy third act, but said the film had one of the more forgivable ones, if only because it verges on full fantasia, and praised the wuxia moments. Accolade. In December 2021, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings received the Vanguard Award at Unforgettable Gala's 19th Annual Asian American Awards, an honor previously held by the Farewell 2019. Documentary Special. In February 2021, the documentary series Marvel Studios Assembled was announced. The specials go behind the scenes of the MCU films and television series with cast members and additional creatives. A special for this film, The Making of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, goes behind the scenes of the making of the film and was released on Disney Plus on November 12, 2021. Sequel. By December 2021, development on a sequel had begun, with Cretton returning to write and direct. Liu was also expected to return as Shang-Chi by the following month. He wanted the sequel to explore what his character would do with the newfound power of the Ten Rings, as well as how he fits into the larger MCU. Liu said in July 2023 that he was unsure when the film would be made. By that November, Cretton stepped down as director of the planned film Avengers: The Kang Dynasty to focus on his commitments to other MCU projects, including the Shang-Chi sequel. Filming was reported in April 2024 to be scheduled to begin in March 2025. Later that month, Liu confirmed that the film was in development when responding to fans who were concerned about the lack of news on the sequel. It's telling when the Marvel Cinematic Universe uses its immense power to operate an assembly line. But it's just as telling when there's a deeply human spark to one of their projects, allowing franchise values like great spectacle, striking performances, and intricate depictions of family to prevail. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the latest addition to the latter category, taking after previous Marvel movies that introduced a vision and became benchmarks. Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Black Panther, and Thor Ragnarok come to mind. Directed by Destin Cretton, this film fits into Marvel packaging in its own way, but it has an immense soulfulness that other MCU movies, superhero movies, and action movies in general should take notes from. Simu Liu stars as Shang-Chi, a key piece to a broken family that has a history of infighting. The dysfunctional family dynamics are even more important than the Ten Rings that grant such immense power to Shang-Chi's power-hungry father Wenwu, who has lived for 1,000 years and created a society called the Ten Rings that has destroyed kingdoms and swayed the events all over the world. When Wenwu found love with Zhang Li, Fala Chen, there was peace. They married and started a family. But after Shang-Chi's mother died, a newly monstrous Wenwu tried to mature his son by making him a killer, causing the young boy to leave behind his sister Xialing, Meng'er Zhang, and Wenwu. Cretton, who previously directed Short Term 12, an Avengers-like showcase of indie rising talent, Brie Larson, Lakeith Stanfield, Rami Malek, etc., keeps those visceral personal stakes in this script by himself, Dave Callaham, and Andrew Lanham, so that the superhero context is a bonus to the drama. The film is a mega-budget ballet, one that glides and floats over an abyss of grief. This backstory comes for Shang-Chi, known as an American adult as Sean, when he rides the bus with his friend Katie, Awkwafina, up and down the hills of San Francisco. A group of henchmen attack Shang-Chi for a green pendant he wears around his neck, and in a beat that's prefaced like a power-up, to Katie's funny surprise, Sean's immense courage suddenly comes to light. So too do his fighting skills, which help make for an incredible melee scene of hand-to-hand combat that has the camera gazing for long shots and freely going in and out of the moving bus, just like its impromptu hero. The scene lacks for its youch factor, especially compared to how nobody did the same thing with appropriate blood earlier this year, but it sidesteps that element by being fast-paced, even longer than you think it'll be, and very funny. It's the birth of an action star in Liu, and an amazing debut for a character who will find himself in fight scenes here of escalating intensity. The power for this film, however, comes through in the eyes of his father, Wenwu. One of the movie's most brilliant choices is casting Tony Leung so that he can repeat the same magic he's had from countless romances and dramas in Hong Kong. Leung rules this movie, with the same silent passion and stillness that made In the Mood for Love one of the greatest romances of all time. Leung destroys armies, raises a family, and struggles to resist destructive grief. His presence is made all the more powerful by the 10 blue rings that help him slingshot around and destroy whatever is in his path. When he hears the voice of what could be his wife from behind a cave of rock, Wenwu becomes a Darth Vader-like tyrant, driving a campaign to rampage through the mother's magical home, known as Ta Lo, in order to get to a cave that everyone else knows, including his son and daughter, has an apocalyptic, soul-sucking dragon inside. It's the best performance from the Marvel Cinematic Universe because the passion and grief it expresses is appropriately Leung-sized. Cretton is able to take this enthralling movie from one scene to the next with this vivid sense of a brother and sister trying to stop their father from destroying everything because he can't move on. It's a more devastating threat than the usual world domination thing, and it parallels how the script builds out the painful backstory of Shang-Chi and his similarly skilled and aggrieved sister, Xialing. With a few strong twists along the way, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings turns into an adventure and a homecoming to a peaceful realm from a whole different time, which brings in a sweet, magnetic performance from Michelle Yeoh. These passages, as balletic as the entire movie, detail how Shang-Chi learned 2 different fighting approaches, life philosophies really, from his mother and father. It doesn't seem like a coincidence that a massive Hollywood tentpole, sincerely based on character-based kung fu, has inspired such rich fight scenes, and it makes the film even more of a refreshing blast. Cretton and his team constantly play with height, light, reflections, and staging when it comes to orchestrating a fight set piece that surprises the audience, like a jaw-dropping, way-up-high nighttime battle royale on some scaffolding in Macau, and then foregrounds the choreography as the main spectacle. It's not just about who is throwing the punches and kicks. I should admit that numerous beats in these sharply edited sequences blew me back in my chair, an involuntary filmmaking nerd response I've had to similar movies that inspired this one. Skyfall, the Grandmaster, for starters. Shang-Chi's thrilling's embrace of clarity, of nudging your imagination instead of doing all the work for you, spreads the inspired special effects that enhance the magic of this story and the world of its characters. There's an evocative use of water. It bursts from walls, floats in the air, and makes a map of icicles. A striking way of depicting a moment that usually would just get a hologram. The movie even throws in a charming animated cute sidekick that cleverly subverts the expectations of cute faces on plush-looking sidekicks. The dominating usage of CGI, the kind that requires dark clouds as we saw in the grand battle of Avengers Endgame, is saved for the last massive sequence, which is such an over-the-top, giddy roller coaster ride that you can't help but root for it. The Avengers, the new roster at least, lurk on the periphery of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, but Cretton's film benefits from establishing its deeper family and friend relationships. Liu and Awkwafina have adorable platonic chemistry as 2 valet workers who are thrust into another adventure, this one more intense than their karaoke nights. Awkwafina in particular becomes a vital source of levity for the script and a welcoming audience surrogate as the film ramps up to a large battle. She helps the humor pop even more compared to the story's darker themes, making numerous passages of the movie not only thrilling, but charming and funny. As for Shang-Chi himself, well, take away the comic relief that lovingly dunks on him, or the battling schools of fighting from his parents that swirl within him, and there's not too much personality to the character. It's a distinct void when one reflects on the performance, given that Liu is so watchable in how he combines a striking, bulky presence with endearing innocence, a la Channing Tatum's own box office dominating days. It becomes telling of the imperfect balancing act of this script that its main character needs a little emphasis in his sequel. The same could be said for other intriguing characters like Xialing, a vengeful badass in her own right, not given enough screen time or depth, especially considering where she ends up. Without spoiling, The movie does make some efforts to address Marvel's previously problematic presentations of Asian characters, and while the moments are used for some self-deprecating comic relief, they remind me of two things: how it's impossible for these Marvel films to exist in a vacuum, and how much more work needs to be done. Even the people who helped make this movie stumble through talking about it, like when Disney CEO Bob Chapek insensitively said this was an interesting experiment, a phrase that indicates a secondary status, something unofficial. The statement is ignorant in many ways, but especially after one witnesses the many triumphs of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. It embraces fruitful ideas, big and small, whether in cohesive action scenes, embracing platonic friendships in a mega-budget movie, or introducing a new exciting hero who also has to instruct his friend and the audience on how to properly say his name. This movie is not an experiment for Marvel and Disney. It is a promising template for how they can get it right again. Although it often feels as though barely a month passes without another comic book movie puffed as a new pinnacle of achievement for the superhero genre, it's vanishingly rare for a film to actually deserve its hype. But Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings does so and more. Director Destin Cretton, who co-wrote with Dave Callaham and Andrew Lanham, is canny enough to realize that the key to success with an effects-driven, eye-popping extravaganza is not the CGI spectacle, it's the basic stuff: textured characters, karaoke and shots-fueled friendships, and electrifyingly badass fight choreography. In the goofy exchanges between Simu Liu's Sean, heir to his father's tricky relationship with power, and his mother's fierce empathy, and his best friend, defender drinking buddy, and fellow valet car parker Katie, Awkwafina, the film is already one of the freshest Marvel pictures in a long time. And that's before the fight on a runaway bus featuring an Eastern European man-mountain with a laser arm prosthesis. But perhaps what's more telling than where this film fits within the Marvel universe, it's an outlier, and all the better for it, is how elegantly it slots into the wuxia fantasy-infused Chinese martial arts tradition. Both in casting, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon's Michelle Yeoh as serene and deadly as ever, and heroes Tony Leung take key roles, and in set pieces, there's a nod to the iconic bamboo forest sequence in House of Flying Daggers. The film takes its cues from the martial arts epics of the early 2000s. Paying homage without becoming derivative is a difficult balance, but the film succeeds. Likewise, Cretton negotiates potential cliches such as flashback sequences and that hoariest of old chestnuts, the training montage, with a gravity-defying lightness of touch. It's only at the very end, when the picture trades its focus on exquisite, thrillingly executed fight sequences for a battle between a bunch of special effects, that this exhilarating blend of genres loses a bit of its shine. But work did not begin in earnest until December 2018, when Callaham was hired. Cretton joined in March 2019 with the project fast-tracked as Marvel's first film with an Asian lead. The film's title and primary cast were announced that July, revealing the film's connection to the Ten Rings organization, which previously appeared throughout the MCU. And its leader, Shang-Chi, and the Legend of the Ten Rings is the first Marvel Studios film with an Asian director and a predominantly Asian cast. Filming began in Sydney in February 2020, but was put on hold in March due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Production resumed in August before completing in October, with additional shooting occurring in Sanna. Francisco Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings premiered in Los Angeles on August 16, 2021, and was released in the United States on September 3rd as part of Phase 4 of the MCU. It grossed over $432 million worldwide, making it the 9th highest-grossing film of 2021. It set several box office records and received positive reviews from critics, many of whom praised the choreography of the action sequences, exploration and representation of Asian culture cons, direction, and the performances from the cast, particularly those of Liu and Elom. The film received numerous awards and nominations, including a nomination for Best Visual Effects at the 94th Academy Awards. A sequel is in development, with Cretton set to return as writer and director. Movie plot: around 1,000 years ago, Zhu Winu discovers the mystical Ten Rings, which grant godly powers, including immortality. He establishes the Ten Rings organization, conquering kingdoms and toppling governments throughout history. In 1996, Wu searches for Talo, a village said to harbor mythical beast. He travels through a magical forest to the village entrance, but is stopped by a guardian, Ying Li. The two fall in love, and when the Talo villagers reject Wen Wulai chooses to leave with him, they marry and have two children. Shen Kai and Ziling Wenwu abandons his organization and locks away the 10 rings when Shang-Chi is 7 years. Old Li is murdered by Wu's enemies. The Iron Gang, one of the 10 rings, once again massacres the Iron Gang and resumes leadership of his organization. He makes Shang-Chi undergo brutal training in martial arts, but does not allow Ziling to train with the others, prompting her to secretly teach herself. When Shang-Chi is 14, Wenwu sends him to assassinate the Iron Gang's leader. After completing his mission, a traumatized Shang-Chi runs away to San Francisco and adopts the name Sha. In the present day, Shang-Chi works as a parking villa with his best friend Katie, who does not know about his past. They are attacked on a bus by the 10 Rings, organization who steal a pendant that Lai gave to Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi travels to Mao to find his sister, fearing that the 10 Rings will go after her matching pendant. He reveals his past to Katie, who insists on helping him. They find Zling at a secret fight club, which he founded after escaping from Windwood. 16. The 10 Rings attack. The Fight Club, and W arrives to capture Shang-Chi, Katie Ziling, and her pendant. They are taken to the 10 Rings compound, where WU uses the pendants to reveal a mystical map leading to Talo. W explains that he has heard Lai calling and believes she has been held captive in Tall Lo behind a sealed gate. He plans to destroy the village unless they release her. When his children and Katie object, he imprisons them. The three meet former actor Trevor Slattery, whom the 10 Rings imprisoned for impersonating Wenwu, and his Hundan companion Morris, who offers to guide them to Tal. The group escapes and goes to Tal, which exists in a separate dimension with various Chinese mythological creatures. They meet Yingnan, Lai's sister, who explains the history of Tal. Thousands of years ago, the universe containing the village was attacked by the soul-consuming Dweller in Darkness and its soul eaters, but was saved by a Chinese dragon called the Great Protector, who helped seal the Dark Gate to the Dweller's world. According to Nan, the Dweller in Darkness has been impersonating Li, so that when we will use the 10 Rings to open the gate shank, Kaisling, Katie Slattery, and Morris joined the villagers in training and preparing for Wu's arrival using outfits and weapons crafted from dragon scales. WW and the 10 Rings arrive and attack. W overpowers Shanghai, pushes him into the nearby lake, and attacks the gate with the rings. This allows some of the Dweller's soul eaters to escape, and the 10 Rings join forces with the villagers to fight them. The Great Protector revives Shang-Chi and bears him from the lake to battle the Soul Eaters. Wenwu and Shang-Chi fight once more, and Shang-Chi gains the upper hand, but chooses to spare with the Dweller in Darkness, escapes from the weakened gate, and attacks Shang-Chi when saves Shang-Chi, bequeathing him the rings before the Dweller in Darkness kills him. Shang-Chi, the Great Protector, Ziling, and Katie slay the Dweller in Darkness. Afterward, Shang-Chi and Katie return to San Francisco, where the Sorcerer W summons them to Kamaj in a mid-credit scene. Wong introduces Shang-Chi and Katie to Bruce Banner and Carol Danvers. While researching the ring's origin, they discover that the rings are acting as a beacon to something. In a post-credit scene, Ziling becomes the new leader of the 10 Rings training women alongside men, despite having told Shang-Chi that she would disband the organization development. According to Margaret Lowe, for former president and CEO of Marvel Productions, Stanley discussed a potential film or television series based on the Marvel Comics character Shang-Chi with actor Brandon Lee and his mother Linda Lee during the 1980s, with the intention of having Brandon Lee star as the character. Brandon's father, martial arts legend Bruce Lee, was the visual inspiration for artist Paul Gilacy when drawing Shang-Chi during his tenure on the Master of Kung Fu comic book series in the 1970. In 2001, Stephen Norrington signed a deal to direct a Shanghai film entitled The Hands of Shang-Chi by 2003. The film was in development at DreamWorks Pictures, with Yuan Woing replacing Norrington as director, and Bruce C. McKenna hired to write the screenplay. Ang Lee joined the project as a producer in 2004, but the film did not materialize after that point, and the rights to the character reverted to Marvel. Shang-Chi was put on a list of characters that Marvel thought could make great films despite being relatively unknown, since he had a very Disney story in the comic books. The Ten Rings were featured in the first Marvel Cinematic Universe film, Iron Man 2008, without their leader, the Mandarin. DMG bet at the offer, since the Mandarin's negative stereotypical portrayal in the comics could potentially prevent the film from releasing in China and risk shutting down DMG as a company. The Mandarin would eventually appear in the DMG co-produced film Iron Man 3 2013, portrayed by Ben Kingsley, but he is revealed to be imposter Trevor Slattery posing as the Mandarin. Feige felt this fake Mandarin did not necessarily mean that a more faithful version of the character did not exist in the MCU by December 2018. Marvel had fast-tracked development of a Shanghai film with the intent of making it their first film with an Asian lead. Marvel hired Chinese-American writer Dave Callaham to write the screenplay and began looking at Asian and Asian-American filmmakers to potentially direct the film. The studio's goal was to explore Asian and Asian American themes presented by Asian and Asian American filmmakers as they had done for African and African American culture with Black Panther earlier in 2018. Development of the film also came following the success of the film Crazy Rich Asians that was likewise released earlier in 2018 and led to several other Asian lead properties being developed by Hollywood studios. Cam's script was expected to modernize elements of the character's comic book story, which was first written in the 1970s, to avoid what modern audiences would consider to be negative stereotypes. When Callaham began work on the script, he became emotional, realizing it was the first project where he was asked to write from my own experience, from my own perspective. Jessica Gal, who would later become the head writer of the TV series, She-Hulk Attorney at Law 2022, had also presented a pitch for the film. Richard Newby of The Hollywood Reporter said the film could break out in a way similar to Black Panther by bringing a new perspective to the character. Newby felt Shang-Chi could have worked well as a television series and said it speaks volumes that Marvel would decide to make a feature film about the character instead. Newby concluded that the film was an opportunity to avoid stereotypes about Asian martial artists and be more than Marvel's Bruce Lee. Marvel Studios hired Japanese-American filmmaker Destin Daniel Keaton to direct the film. In March 29th, Deborah Chow, who previously directed episodes of Marvel Television's Iron Fist and Jessica Jones series Justin Tipping and Alan Yang, were also considered. Keaton admitted that he had previously not been interested in directing a superhero film, but was drawn to the project to help create a world and character that Asian children could look up to and see themselves in. Ket's pitch for the film included visual inspiration from Chinese, South Korean, Japanese, and other Asian cinema, including anime, to highlight a tone that showed the drama and the pain of life, but also show the humor of life in April. Marvel Studios and Australian Arts Minister Mitch Fifield announced that an upcoming Marvel film, believed to be Shang-Chi, would be filmed at Fox Studios Australia and Sydney and on location. Throughout the state of New South Wales, the production received $4 million in one-off funding from the Australian government, as well as backing from the $1 million made in NSSW State Fund. The production was expected to generate $150 million for the Australian economy, as well as 4,700 new jobs, while taking advantage of around 1,200 local business pre-production. In mid-July 2019, Marvel Studios began testing actors in their 20 seconds for the role of Shang-Chi, including L.S. Tan and Simu Liu, previously portrayed Chu Chang in Iron Fist. The studio was adamant the actors be of Chinese descent. To audition for the character, Leo was considered earlier in the audition process and was brought back in for a second audition when the creatives were finding it difficult to cast the role. He tested again for the part on July 14th and was officially cast on July 16th. Awkwafina, who was the first actor cast for the film, had chemistry tests with the potential actors and said it was apparent that was Shang-Chi from the jump. Liu and Awkwafina's castings were announced by Cretton and producer Feige at Marvel Studios' San Diego Comic-Con panel on July 20th, where the film's full title was announced to be Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Feige noted the Ten Rings organization's rule throughout the MCU and said the Mandarin would be introduced in this film, with Tony Leung in the role the Ten. Rings logo was changed for the film from including Mongolian language in previous MCU appearances to having an offensive Chinese characters that are synonyms for strength or power. Written in ancient seal script, Kingsley reprises his role as Slattery in Shanghai, and the Legend of the Ten Rings, with the character's inclusion planned early on in order to help fully explore the context of who the Mandarin is. In the MCU, producer Jonathan Schwartz called Slattery a secret weapon, whose introduction part way through the film moves it in a different direction and provides comic relief. Keaton said in October that production would begin in early 2020. In December, Feige said the film would feature a predominantly Asian cast. A month later, Michelle Yeoh entered talks for a role in the film. This was for a different character than Aletta Ard, who had briefly portrayed in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Ball 2 2017. In addition to Callaham, Cretton and Andrew Lanham also contributed to the screenplay for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, from a story by Callaham and Cretton. The film was described as a sweeping superhero epic that combines emotional family drama with gravity-defying martial arts action. Schwartz said much of Shang-Chi's arc within Marvel Comics is a family drama, and Cretton wanted to focus on that element for the film, exploring Shang-Chi's broken and abusive family background. Lee noted that the comic book backstory for Shang-Chi is not widely known like those for comic book characters such as Batman or Spider-Man, and that gave the film's writers freedom to take more creative liberties with the story, and Callaham were cognizant of some of the racial stereotypes surrounding the character in the comics, with Liu saying everyone involved was very sensitive to not of it go into stereotypical territory. Cretton believed the resulting script was a really beautiful update to the character from what began in the comics. Keaton felt the film told an authentic story about Asian identity. Callaham said there is no single Asian American voice, and he and Cretton contemplated how the film could speak to the wider Asian diaspora and would be generally entertaining, but also personal to all these people. Cast members Leilon and Meng'er Zhang contributed their own experiences, coming from Canada, Hong Kong, and mainland China, respectively, to add to the authenticity of the film. Some aspects that were discussed regarding each scene were whether characters should be speaking in Chinese, Mandarin, or English, and the type of food served in the different households to ensure it felt authentic to whose house it was. The film's opening begins with narration entirely in Mandarin, which Nancy Wang-Huan, writing for E9, said was a striking decision for an MCU film to begin in a language other than English and continue to do so for an extended period. Regarding the use of Mandarin in the film, Cretton said the choice of which language to use when was always rooted in just the logic of the characters and who would naturally be speaking what language. Zhang, whose first language is Mandarin, served as a dialect coach for the other actors, having Shang-Chi surrounded by many strong women formed out of the relationship between Shang-Chi and Debian, with them being supporting characters to him while also being on their own narrative arcs. Cretton stated that having women who are kind of kicking has butt into gear throughout the movie just felt right. Cons 3 sisters and his wife helped inspire Katie Zilling Ying Nan, and Ying speaking to the relationship between Shang-Chi and Katie. Cretton enjoyed being able to show a strong, deeply caring friendship that is rarely seen in superhero films, adding that it never felt right to have the two characters end up in a romantic relationship, since it would have been forced. Cretton felt seeing Shelling become the new head of the Ten Rings organization in the film's post-credits scene was reflective of her beginning to take control of her life. Various versions of the scene existed throughout the production before it was moved to be after the credit, since they thought it was a juicy idea for where the story might go in the future. Cretton also noted there was more material created regarding the Ten Rings that was purposely withheld to be explored in future project filming. Principal photography began in February 2020, shooting at Fox Studios Australia in Sydney and on location throughout the state of New South Wales under the working title Steamboat William Pope. Served as cinematographer for the film, shooting on the AR Alexa LF Cretton, chose Pope because he felt the cinematographer style could be both naturalistic and heightened, and because of Pope's work on The Matrix 1999, which Cretton believed had the right tone for an MCU film focused on Asian and Asian American characters. Cretton was inspired by Jackie Chan's filmography, the Ip Man series, Tai Chi Master, and Kung Fu Hustle, among others in the martial arts and kung fu genres, as well as anime and video games. On March 12th, after studios had started halting production on films due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Cretton decided to have himself tested for coronavirus after working closely with people who had potentially been exposed to it. This was a precaution due to Cretton having a newborn baby, and he self-isolated while awaiting these results. The test later came back negative, while Cretton was self-isolating. Marvel suspended first unit production for the film, but intended for other aspects, such as second unit, to continue as normal on March 13th. The rest of the film's production was paused as Disney halted filming on most of its project before the shut down. Ronnie Ching joined the cast in an undisclosed role in early April. Disney shifted much of their Phase 4 slate of films due to the pandemic, moving Shang-Chi's release date to May 7, 2021. Work building sets for the film resumed at the end of July 2020, and by August 2nd, all cast and crew members had arrived to begin shooting in the coming days. Any cast and crew members returning to Australia from outside the country had to be quarantined for 2 weeks upon arrival before returning to work, according to Australia's guidelines. Later in August, Y was confirmed to appear in the film the next month. The film's release date was pushed back to July 9, 2021, after Black Widow was shifted to the May 2021 day. In October, filming took place in San Francisco also. Under the working title, Steamboat shooting locations included the Russian Hill, No Valley, and Nob Hill neighborhoods, as well as Fisherman's Wharf in Gerard Deli Square. Filming wrapped on October 24, 2012. For the film's action scenes, Cretton drew inspiration from a range of different fighting styles due to Shang-Chi being trained in different types of martial arts. These include the elegant, almost ethereal Wu style from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the kinetic fights of Jackie Chan's films. Supervising stunt coordinator Brad Allen, along with other members of the Jackie Chan stunt team, became responsible for making the different styles feel consistent as well as containing elements of Hong Kong action. Cinema Chinese choreographers were used to create Aya-style fight scenes. Schwartz said there was a meaning for each fighting style in the film, and they helped to tell the story. Visual A bus fight sequence was part of Khan's pitch for the film, calling it a what-if scenario to help explain the fight. Sequences he enjoyed, ones where the stakes just keep rising as the fight continues. Once it was planned for the film, Cretton credited Allen for bringing the Buster Keaton-like physical comedy mixed with setups and payoffs and stakes, rising to almost ridiculous levels. Fight coordinator Andy Chang added that the bus fight took over a year to plan, going through as many as 20 different iterations, with most of the differences pertaining to the fighting. Within the bus, the sequence was partially completed when the production shut down for kid, requiring those involved to retune once production resumed to complete. 2 buses were utilized on a 15 feet high gimbal for all the big moves, and another gimbal 3.3 feet high with the windows and seats removed most of the time for safety. Shang added that figuring out how the bus would be sliced in half and choreographing a fight around it was the most difficult part. Although the exterior shots of the sequence were filmed in San Francisco, the bus interior scenes were shot in C. The sequence was shot in 48 FPS to help with tracking or adjustments, and converted back to 24 FPS, while the shots in slow motion were shot at 250 FPS using a phantom camera. The Kama attack from the anime Dragon Ball Z was an inspiration for the final fight between Shang-Chi and WW, which Cretton had also included in his pitch music recording for the film score composed by Joel P. West. began at Abbey Road Studios in London by June 2021. Lee scored Cretton for previous films. The film score was released digitally by Marvel Music and Hollywood Records on September 1st, 2021. Marvel Music, Hollywood Records, and Interscope Records also released 4 separate singles ahead of the film's release. Lazy Susan by 21 Savage and Rich, Brian Every Summertime by Nicki, Run It by DJ Snake, Rick Ross and Rich Brian, and In the Dark by Selly and Ganeo. A soundtrack album containing these songs was released on September 3rd, in addition to songs by J.J. Lin, Sawi Anderson Hawk, and other artists, and was produced by Sean Mishiro. In 88 Rising released Shang-Chi, and The Legend of the Ten Rings had its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater in TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles on August 16, 2021, and was screened at CinemaCon on August 25th. The film began releasing in international markets on September 1st, with it releasing in 66% of its markets by the end of its first weekend in Australia. Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings was released on September 2nd, with the planned release in New South Wales, Victoria, and Australian Capital Territory on September 16th because of the COVID-19 related state lockdowns. It ultimately released in New South Wales on October 11th, when theaters in the state reopen. It was released in the United States on September 3rd in over 4,200 theaters with 400 acts, over 850 in premium large format 500 3D and 275 in specialty D-Box, 4DX, and ScreenX. The film had a 45-day exclusive theatrical release, rather than being released simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus with premiere access like Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and The Legend of the Ten Rings is part of Phase 4 of the MCU. Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings was previously scheduled to be released on February 12th, 2021, the first day of the Chinese New Year. Before it was shifted to May 7th and then to July 9th, delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The film shifted once again in March 2021 to the September 2021 date, after Black Widow was moved to the July 99th release date in May 2021. A Chinese state media report excluded Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, as well as Eternals, from its list of upcoming MCU films releasing, which Variety noted added to rumors that the films would not be released in China in September 2021. Deadline Hollywood reported that a theatrical release in China was unlikely due to comments Lei made in an interview with the CBC in 2017, referencing negative comments from his parents about living in China. Despite this, by early October, Disney still listed the film's release in China as to be determined. Home media the film was released on. Digital download on November 12, 2012, as well as on Disney Plus as part of the service's Disney Plus Day celebration. Disney Plus also received the EMX enhanced version of the film. It was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on November 30th. The home media of the film includes audio commentary, deleted scenes, a gag reel, and various behind-the-scenes feature X following the release of Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings on Disney Plus viewer. Tracking application Sam TV reported that over 1.7 million U.S. households watched the film within its first weekend of availability. Sam TV also disclosed viewerships for the United Kingdom 250,000, Germany 85,000, and Australia 177,000, while TV Time reported that it was the most streamed film in the United States during that same time frame. Nielsen stated that it was the second most streamed film with a viewership of 1.72 billion minutes in its first week. Asian Americans made up 10% of the audience, the highest percentage for any title on the chart. In the second week, it was the third most streamed film according to Nielsen, with 878 million minutes viewed, and the second most streamed film according to TV Time. It retained its position on TV Time in the following week, while Nielsen stated that it was the third most streamed film with 613 million minutes viewed. In the fourth week, it dropped to the third position on TV Time's chart, while dropping to the fifth position on Nielsen's chart with a viewership of 273 million minutes. It dropped to the fourth position on TV Time in the following week, while retaining its position on Nielsen with 233 million minutes viewed. In the sixth week, it rose to the third position on TV Time's chart. TV Times stated that it was the sixth most streamed film globally in 2021. The film was number 1 on the NPD VidiSkin First Alert chart, which tracks combined sales of DVDs and Blu-rays, and the dedicated Blu-ray sales chart for 2 weeks. According to the numbers it sold combined 274,482 DVD and Blu-ray units in the first week for a revenue of $5.2 million. In the second week, it sold 143,144 units for $2.7 million. Meanwhile, it also acquired the first position on Redbox's digital chart. After release, it was the third most selling title on disc for December 2021, according to the NPD Group. Other information about this movie: directed by Destin Daniel, Cretton screenplay by Dave Callaham, Destin Daniel, Cretton Andrew Lanham story by Dave Callaham, Destin Daniel, Cretton based on Marvel, comics produced by Kevin Feige, Jonathan Schwartz starring Simu Liu, Awkwafina,
Meng'er, Zhang, F. Chen Florian Montino, Benedict W. Iwa, Michelle Yo Ben Kingsley.
Tony Loom cinematography, William Pope edited by Matt Sanders, Dillett, Ronald Sturr.
Harry I music by Joel P. West, production company Marvel Studios, distributed by
Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. Release dates August 16, 2021, September 3, 2021. United States running time 132 minutes. Country United States language English. Budget 150 to 200 million. Box office $432.92. Know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe.